So you can always use more than one effector, right? Because like this effectors here is a list, so it allows you to combine different effectors with each other. So let's add another effector called, let's say, plane. So if I disable and enable plane, notice what happens. Or I'll just disable both effectors, random and plane. So go to the cloner and the effectors tab, you see that both effectors are connected to this. Okay, make sure that that's happening. So if I enable plane, enable and disable plane, you see that all of the objects, all of the clones are moving upwards, right? So I go to the plane effector. In the parameters tab, I can see that by default the position is selected. But this plane effector moves all of them together, not like the random effector, or rotates all of them. Does not do that randomly. Okay. So, but if I want to selectively do that, I choose or use another tool called field. Okay. So, is everyone familiar with Photoshop? Adjustment layers? Does anyone doesn't know that? Anyone who doesn't know that? Adjustment layers? Okay, layer masks, you all know that, right? You can think of these effectors here as adjustment layers to the clones of the objects, okay? And what I'm going to show you now, which is the fields, is the layer masks of those adjustment layers, okay? Think of this effector as an adjustment layer, and this field here will be something like a layer mask, okay? So if I enable and disable this plane, you see that every clone is moved upwards. But if I add, let's say, a linear field like this, okay, which created a new object here underneath this plane effector, which shows that this field is masking this effector. I go to the move tool and move this field and see that now this plane effector is not affecting all of them, but only the ones who are masked by or unmasked by this linear field. Okay? So linear field, you can think of it like a gradient mask now. Okay? I increase or decrease this gradient, and it allows me to make a soft shift between this plane effector's effect actually. Okay? So I increase this Y position thing here, and you can see that how this linear field is allowing me to selectively apply this plane effector there. Okay? So be careful, because at this point things might get confusing for you, because this cloner object now has two effectors. One is random and one is plane. This plane is active now and random is inactive now. If I enable random effector, you see that it's both, like, the positions are randomized, and there's also an effect coming from this plane effector, which is controlled by this linear field. See, so now you can use these in conjunction with each other and combine different effects and animate them together. So this might be making things a little bit more confusing maybe. So instead of a linear field, let's change this field type from linear field to a spherical field, which is very small now, but I'll just increase the size. So notice that how the cubes that remain inside the sphere are affected. Okay, I'll just disable random now. Okay, so now the cubes inside the spherical field is affected by this plane effector. Okay. Don't take the color change into consideration. That's not a material, but that's an indicator for making it more visible. Okay. So in the plane effector, I only moved them upwards. Okay. But I can also scale them so that they become taller buildings maybe towards the center. Okay. So when I move the spherical field, they become taller buildings towards the center. So let's get rid of this random effector because it can confuse you. It was disabled, so it doesn't make any change. So I'll just, okay, all these buildings are very, very ordered, right? So I want a little bit more randomness in that. So I go to the cloner, and in the effectors part, I add a random effector, and notice that how each cube is affected by that random effector. But I don't want the position to be randomized. I disable that. I want the scale to be randomized in this direction so that they become a little bit more organic, not all the same. Okay? For now. Maybe, okay, just a little bit the other dimensions can be also randomized. So, but now this random effector is affecting all of the clones. But it's also possible to connect this spherical field to this random effector so that this mask, let's say, can mask the randomness together with this plane effector. Okay? So I go to the random effector, and for each effector you can see that there is a tab called fields. Okay? In this plane effector, inside the fields tab, you can see that the spherical field is active and visible there. It shows that this object here is connected to this plane effector. So when I go to the random effector and its fields tab, you see that nothing is there, okay? So I can connect the spherical field to this effector by also dragging this inside here. So notice what happened. So I'll just undo. When I undo, you see that everything is random, but if I redo that, if I undo and redo, sorry, it's related with viewport updates. So okay, now this random effector also has this spherical field. So when I move this, you see that although these are ordered, you see that only the cubes that are inside this volume or the spherical field is randomized. So I can make it more pronounced. If I go to the random parameter, maybe increase this a lot. Okay. So now without the random, they are very smoothly or gradually scaled. And if I enable random, only the ones which are under the spherical field are randomized. Okay, is it clear, or this might be confusing? So please ask questions if you have. Okay, so maybe instead of this, I can show this with an easier setup, which can be a grid of cubes. I'll just scale this down, add a cloner, put this inside that, increase it as a grid, something like this. I can increase the scale like this. Okay. So when this is selected, I'll add a plane effector, which by default moves everything upwards 100 centimeters, okay, which is visible here. But I don't want it to move upwards. I want it to rotate only, okay, and rotate in this direction. So let's say 45 degrees. So this plane effector rotates each clone by 45 degrees. But when this is active, I go to the fields and add, okay, by default add a linear field. You can see that, I'll just increase this and move this field now. You can see that this field disables or enables the effect of this plane effector. Is this clear, or do you have any questions regarding this? No, okay. This is like a gradient mask. You can think of this like a gradient mask, this linear field. But I can also change the type of this field from linear field to, let's say, spherical field. But this sphere is very tiny now, so I can increase the size of it by like this. Okay, you see that towards the center now, the cubes that are inside this linear spherical field starts to rotate, which is dictated by this plane effector. Until now, do you have any questions? Okay, so when I move this spherical field, I'm moving the mask. So I'm moving the area which this plane effector is applied onto the clones here. Okay, so of course, like this plane effector can also be used to scale these objects so that I can increase the Y scale like this. Okay, like this. So again, this time when I move this spherical field, it both rotates these cubes and scales them. But okay, maybe this might be confusing after some time, so I'll just disable scale. So I just rotate it, okay? So I just rotated 45 degrees. So, okay, instead of rotation, let's only use scale. So now, this spherical field allows me to dictate which one of these cubes are scaled like this. I'll just increase the clone number to make it, yeah. Okay, so when I move this spherical field, I'm adjusting the scales of the cubes that fall inside this spherical field, okay? But I think that this is too much in order, so I'll just increase this size, okay? What I want is I also want these cubes to be scaled a little bit randomly, okay? I want them to be taller, but I don't want them to be this much evenly distributed or gradually distributed. So I like a little bit more organic look. So for that, I go to the cloner and add a random effector, which affects all of them, right? Everything is disturbed now. but I just want the ones who fall inside this sphere, spherical field here, to be randomized. Okay? First, I just want to, okay, I'll do nothing first. I'll just mask this random effector with this spherical field. Do you have any questions until now? No? Yes? Okay, so I'll just use this spherical field to also mask this random effector. So for that, I go to the random effectors fields tab and drag this spherical field to there. So as soon as I do that, notice that the surrounding cubes are not affected anymore, but only the spherical field is randomized. So notice that how they are not gradually, or let's disable this. You see how they are placed randomly. Is this clear now? So one spherical field, okay, this is also confusing because like it's the child of this plane effector, but it's affecting masking two things. I can drag this out and it will still function because this field is connected to that effectors by these boxes here, okay? So I can then group them, like for example, I can create, did I show you the null object? Okay, so think of this, I can select them all and put inside the null object and name this effectors, okay? And then field, this might be more evident because like this is used as, this is grouped with these effectors so that it's also visible that it's related to these effectors, right? I can also create a cloner system, let's say. I can select them and put them inside this. And now I see that, I can understand that all of these things reside in this group. And effectors are there. I can play with the randomness of this. Let's say like this, okay? And I can understand to some extent that, okay, this is moving all of them, okay? So basically this is today's classwork. I want you to submit this. You can, of course, like play with different properties. It doesn't have to be, okay, random doesn't have to be in the position. It can also be done for the rotation. So maybe you're doing something like this so that this spherical field scales them up and also rotates them something like this. Okay. And notice that, for example, let's move this like that. I can exaggerate the scaling effect by doing something like this. So it becomes a very spiky thing. Okay. Or I can scale this field. Okay. Is this clear? Do you have any questions? If you have, please ask. There's no stupid questions, okay? So the basic thing that I want you to do is use a single field which controls two different effectors. And when I move this field, it will mask the effect of two different effectors. In this one, for example, one is randomness One is the plane scaling of this object. Okay.